So as Renita shared, I started my career as a teacher in a specialized program that was designed for students with developmental disabilities. And most of the students that I worked with did have histories of dangerous behavior, self-injury, physical aggression, things like that. But I will say that I was pretty good at anticipating situations that might lead to dangerous behavior, and I was pretty good at avoiding those situations. So if a student had a hard time being given directive instructions, I would make sure to always phrase my instructions as questions. If a student only wanted to use the computer on the right, I made sure the computer on the right was saved for him. And so the classroom was generally pretty peaceful. But one day I moved to a different job in that school, and a new teacher took over my classroom. And this new teacher was dedicated and kind, but he found the role pretty challenging. Dangerous behavior was popping up left and right. The students were stressed, the educational assistants were stressed, and the new teacher was stressed. And so it didn't take long for the new teacher to leave. I came back and things seemed to get better. But after a while, I left again, and this time I was going back to school myself. And a new teacher, different person, took over the classroom. And things got hard again. But as I studied, I started to realize what had happened. It was definitely not that I was just a better teacher than everyone else. It was that I was so good at avoiding the situations that my students found difficult that they'd never learned the skills to handle those situations. And because they hadn't learned those skills, of course, dangerous behavior would crop back up when they encountered challenges. And so the answer was not to have all adults be better at avoidance forever. The answer was to teach the students how to navigate challenges and access things that are important to them in different ways. So I learned how to carefully plan these challenges to create just the right teaching opportunity. I learned how to proactively teach students the skills to respond differently to those challenges. And importantly, I learned how to teach students to use those skills with new teachers. So I'm here today to share with you what I was fortunate enough to learn. It's an approach called practical functional assessment and skill-based treatment. And these are a way of doing applied behavior analysis. The company I work for now focuses on helping other professionals learn this way. And we do that because we believe that as a field, we can do better than simply managing or avoiding behavior. We believe we can do better than blaming factors outside our control for behavior. And we work with organizations who share this mission to create a world in which severe, challenging behavior is understood and meaningfully addressed in compassionate models of care. Places like the Geneva Centre. I've had the honor of working with the Geneva Centre team over the last year as they've developed their new Behavior Services program. The new Behavior Services program addresses dangerous behavior through focused services that are individualized and implemented by professionals with advanced training. And later you're going to hear from the team trainers from Courtney and Elyse about that work. They have some really nice outcomes to share with you. And really, they and their clients and their teams are the stars of this presentation. But as their opening act, I'm going to set the stage by giving an overview of the approach that we used and take you through some of the essential ideas that form the basis for our approach. So the central question is, how do we address dangerous behaviors? Can our approach be dignified, trust-building, even fun, and also effective at the same time? It can, and I'm going to show you how through the story of a young man who we'll call Kenny. Kenny is a young man who lives with his family, attends his local public school. He was diagnosed with autism, and at the time this story starts, he had limited communication skills and he was really struggling. Self-injurious behavior was a regular occurrence, and it was intense. These photos here show you some of his injuries. I am using these photos with permission, and it's to show you just how serious the self-injury was. Clearly, Kenny needed help. In our today's ABA approach, we start by listening to the family, to the people who know the learner well, and to the learner themselves. Practically speaking, we do an open-ended interview. Looks like this. And if the client has the language skills, we talk to them too. If not, we get their input in different ways. Our interview is made up of questions designed to encourage the sharing of the person's story. What do they love? What do they find difficult? How do they express that difficulty? What are the values and priorities? Because our commitment is that we won't try to address behavioral problems until we understand why they're occurring and what would be helpful for the person to do instead. So in Kenny's case, we spoke with his parents and his teachers. From that interview, we learned that Kenny loved active play. He loved to jump on the trampoline, play on the playground. We also learned that academic tasks were hard for him. Oops, there we go. And so were daily living tasks. They were so hard, in fact, that when Kenny was asked to transition away from his favorite activities to do academic or daily living activities, self-injurious behavior often occurred. His family and his teachers just wanted Kenny to be safe, to be happy, and to be able to learn new things. We use that information first and foremost to set up a therapy context where the learner can be happy, relaxed, and engaged. This is where we listen to the learner. Even if they're not able to tell us with words what makes them happy, we take the time to discover it. This is part of developing a therapeutic relationship. And research has shown all this. This is one of the ones where you're like, did we need research to tell us this? Spending time together, doing enjoyable activities is a good way to build rapport with someone. And we recognize that learning and therapy outcomes tend to be improved when the relationship between the service recipient and the provider is positive. This has been observed not only in our field, but in the medical field as well. So our goal is to build trust and only teach when we can do so from a place of joy. There is another reason for this too. When we discover what makes a client happy, relaxed, and engaged, we actually start to learn something about the causes of behavior. We haven't even seen any dangerous behavior at this point. The client's happy, but that's still useful. Now we know, okay, well, this situation doesn't contain any triggers, so we can make note of what this situation looks like. So the team spent some quality time with Kenny, doing things he loves to do, connecting with him, understanding what brings him joy. Our next goal is to let the learner know that we'll listen to them, that we won't force them to do anything, that we'll do our best to honor their communication. So once the learner's comfortable, happy, relaxed, engaged, we introduce a therapy or educational activity. And if the learner communicates in any way, with words, with challenging behavior, we immediately honor that. We would stop with the activity. We would allow them to go back to what they were doing before. We'd interact with them the way they want us to. And by doing this, we teach the learner that we will listen. And that is very important for our relationship. It's also probably not what a lot of us have been trained to do. But this step is also important for safety because we've taught the learner that they do not need to escalate to dangerous behavior for us to listen. We'll pay attention and honor the first time they try to tell us something. And what we learn here also is what's a trigger for the learner, what's hard for them. And that information is going to be very important later on. So these 3 steps, asking questions, learning what makes the learner happy, empowering the learner, this is called a practical functional assessment. There are a lot more little details about how you would do that, but as an overview, this is what it is. In our assessment with Kenny, we learned that it was hard for him to transition from his favorite activities to less favorite ones. In other words, if he was asked to stop favorite activities, transition, he often would yell, cry, engage in self-injury, or engage in physical aggression towards others. We also agreed as a team that the goal was for Kenny to respond differently in those same situations. The goal was for him to use his words, to accept disappointment when necessary, to participate in some of these learning tasks. When the practical functional assessment's done, then we move into teaching. Because we don't want to simply avoid the things that are hard for the client forever. You remember how well that went in my classroom. Instead, we want to teach them the skills to respond differently and to access the outcomes they care about without dangerous behavior. This visual shows the sequence of skills that we often teach. It is always individualized, though. So we would start by teaching the learner a safe way to communicate, to make a request instead of communicating via challenging behavior. And that's helpful, but it's really only helpful when the request can be honored. When the answer has to be no, and in life, sometimes that's going to happen, then what? Well, many of the learners that we work with don't know how to respond to those denials. And so our next step is to teach a response that they can give, a safe one, when the answer is no. From there, we might move up this tree trunk, working on setting aside favorite activities, transitioning to something else. And then those branches up there are what we're transitioning to. Something that's been difficult for the learner in the past, but something that seems important and meaningful for them to work on. Maybe it's academics, maybe it's activities of daily living, maybe it's language development, maybe it's something else. But we always continue to honor the person's requests some of the time. The goal is not to override everything that the learner wants, but rather to strike a balance. Sometimes in life, you get to do things that you choose to do. Sometimes you've got to do other stuff, and it can be hard to do that other stuff, but we're teaching the skills to be successful with that here. So for Kenny, these skills on the tree are indeed what he learned. Our first order of business is always to strengthen trust and rapport, as I've already discussed. And then next, Kenny learned to use words when an adult interrupted his favorite activities and asked him to do something difficult. The specific phrase that Kenny learned at first was "my way," to say that he wanted to continue to do things his way, his favorite activities, his preferred interactions with caregivers. And learning this was helpful. Now, if his teacher interrupted him, we didn't see dangerous behavior anymore. Instead, he used his words. But again, it's only helpful if the teacher could grant Kenny his request every time he asked. And that's not feasible long term. So next, Kenny learned a safe response to give when his request had to be denied. And in his case, he learned to give the teacher a fist bump to signal that he was okay with the denial. Then he learned to put aside his current activity, transition to his desk, and to succeed at academic and daily living tasks and more. But how do we teach these skills? Well, we care about peaceful progress. So we teach in a stepwise manner, not trying to teach all of the skills at once, but instead we start at the bottom of that tree trunk. And as the client learns another skill, we add in another one. And we provide the same reinforcers, the same personally important outcomes for skill use that the learner used to get via challenging behavior. We arrange lots of carefully planned teaching opportunities that are just the right amount of challenge, not too easy, not too hard. And we don't force the learner to do things. You may find this hard to believe, but we have research showing that when we don't force clients and students to participate, when they're free to leave at any time, they stay most of the time. And that was the case for Kenny. By the end of skill-based treatment, Kenny was fully included in his grade 7 classroom, including all specials. He still had a one-to-one educational assistant, but that person was not there to manage his behavior. That person was there to help him academically. There were many wins, including decrease in self-injury, no injuries or bruises, elimination of physical aggression towards others. Kenny was now wanting to attend school and able to attend full-time. He was using more language to communicate, seeking out interactions, and so forth. His mother was involved in all steps of the process. She attended meetings, participated in problem solving and planning, and this is what she had to say. This approach has been studied, and peer-reviewed research has repeatedly shown positive outcomes, significant reductions. Oops, slide just flipped itself. Significant reductions in problem behavior, increases in skills, learners wanting to participate, and satisfaction from parents and teachers. There we go. Now, back to the Geneva Centre and the new Behaviour Services program. This program is focused and short-term, and doing practical functional assessment and skill-based treatment that way has been shown to be effective. My colleague, Dr. Joshua Jessel, is currently a professor at Brock University, but he used to run a clinic in the US, and he published several papers on his work there. In this study here, Dr. Jessel reported on the outcomes for 25 consecutively enrolled patients. That is, he didn't pick and choose the best outcomes to share. He reported all of the outcomes in a given time period. In this model, clients received about 35 hours of intensive treatment by highly trained professionals, and then another 35 hours of work on generalizing the skills to parents and caregivers. And in terms of results, all participants achieved reductions in challenging behavior and increases in skills. In the last 3 clinic sessions, every participant showed at least a 90% reduction in challenging behavior compared to baseline. Many showed 100% reduction, that is, no challenging behavior occurred. Caregivers rated the treatment as highly acceptable and the outcomes as helpful. In this little figure, if you're graphically inclined, you can see that there's a rating scale from 1, not helpful at all, to 7, very helpful. And then along the y-axis, you can see the questions that were asked. You found the treatment to be acceptable. You were satisfied in the amount of improvement in problem behavior. You were satisfied in the amount of improvement in communication skills. And you found the assessment and treatment helpful to your home situation. Each of these dots reflects an individual caregiver's response, and you can see that by and large, the responses were very positive. So again, these outcomes were obtained with a time-limited short-term clinic service. But what about maintenance? Do these effects stay with us over time? Dr. Jessica Slayton asked that question and answered it in a study that was published last year, and I'm going to share just some of her outcomes. Some of her outcomes about crisis procedures. So by crisis procedures, I mean physical restraint, physical escort, locked timeout rooms, moving all of the children, other children out of the room, protective equipment. Prior to the study, the students in the study experienced crisis procedures 40 times in 15 days on average. After skill-based treatment, crisis procedures dropped to near zero. And 1 year later, crisis procedures were at zero. In other words, the effects of skill-based treatment did maintain a year later. Okay, I'm gonna make one more point today. Many are probably familiar with the term trauma-informed care, but just in case, trauma-informed care is a universal approach to support and avoid re-traumatizing individuals who may have experienced trauma. This is different from trauma-specific services. Trauma-specific services are those designed to address the effects of trauma, address post-traumatic stress disorder, reactive attachment disorder, those sorts of things. By contrast, trauma-informed care is a universal approach that can be taken without even knowing whether a particular client or student has experienced trauma. It's a universal precaution. Generally, trauma-informed care involves commitments like these: acknowledging the potential for trauma and its impacts, ensuring safety and trust, promoting choice and autonomy, building skills. And there have been several recent papers that discuss the ways in which practical functional assessment and skill-based treatment are consistent with these tenets of trauma-informed care. We talked about some of them briefly today: this emphasis on safety and trust, this emphasis on skill building, promoting autonomy by teaching communication. And so if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to take a look at these papers. Don't want to take up too much time because the really exciting part of this presentation is next. Courtney and Elyse are going to be telling you about the work that they've done at the Geneva Centre, which has involved some very intensive training for themselves and other members of their teams, because they've invested in doing this the right way. We do know from research that to learn a new skill, one should not only hear about the skill, but also see it modeled, practice it, get feedback on it. And that's what Courtney, Elyse, and their teams have done. They've completed educational content on this approach. They've seen video models, and they've also practiced the skills with coaching and feedback. And not just once. That wasn't like they practiced it once and then went and did it on their own. In our consultations, we've met once per week, and the Geneva Centre team brings video clips of themselves implementing this approach. We reflect on those together. I provide feedback and suggestions, and this is really the way to make sure that a new approach is introduced correctly. Not all organizations are willing to invest in that, but the Geneva Centre has, and I think that you're going to see that impact on the quality of the work this team is doing. So Courtney and Elyse, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Ruppel. That was very nice. I am just going to share my screen before we get started here. And I just want to make sure everyone can see that okay. Perfect. So here is just a brief kind of reminder of what our mission here at GCA is, and in terms of where we reach our services and who we reach our services with as well. So we wanted to start a presentation to kind of speak to what Dr. Ruppel was talking about about the perspective of what ABA today is looking like. Not just within our PFA SBT clinic that we will definitely dive into more, but also GCA as an agency. So our goal here is always to create individualized preferred learning environments that honor each person's unique strengths and preferences, and while fostering these meaningful skills that value both their individual as well as their broader community. And we do this and achieve this by including and inviting the autistic community into this learning and process here. And the quote here by Dr. Hanley on the screen, we felt really encompasses what we try to emulate and do here at GCA in terms of really working with and meeting the clients where they're at, not just at that beginning process when we're starting to get to know them, but through that entire journey along with them. So as Dr. Bill said, there's 3 specific pillars that PFA SBT really looks to follow and emphasizes. So the first being that safety piece. So of course, keeping in mind that safety of the client throughout, again, the entire process, but also looking at everyone else who's involved in this process with the client and making sure that their safety is maintained as well. So making sure that staff, caregivers, community members are safe throughout this process. And through that, we're able to minimize the use of intrusive measures, which then leads into that second piece in terms of televisability. So that looking at the dignity of the client, again, throughout this entire process, we want to feel that the process and the strategies that we're using, we're proud of, and we want to show them. And I know I can speak for my team that we're always very eager and proud and happy to share what we're doing and how we're doing it, and feel very confident that everything we do is very televisable. Lastly, we also put a lot of emphasis on that rapport piece. So ensuring that we've built that trusting relationship and that place of joy with our learners before we start teaching these sometimes challenging skills for them. We want to ensure that, like Dr. Hanley says, we're teaching from a place of joy and we're bringing being the joy bringers for all of our clients. We want them to be smiling and eager to see us when we greet them at the beginning and coming into our practice session. And again, making sure that this rapport, of course, is being built at the very beginning of things, but also maintaining and continuing to work and develop that rapport throughout the entire time that we're working and supporting our clients. So the big question, why did we here at GCA want to take on introducing this PFA SBT clinic? So of course, the values that we've gone over definitely aligned with what we do here at GCA, as well as the field as ABA moving in this direction. And we also wanted to be leaders in terms of promoting this framework and assessment and treatment process. We also identified that there was a need just for something different. So that first piece in terms of our current mediator model of behavior services was proving to show some limitations, which at times was resulting in not gaining and developing these meaningful changes in terms of reducing the challenging behaviors that we were aiming to do with our caregivers. These limitations include client readiness, caregiver readiness, understanding of ASD, ABA, the basics of behavior, family dynamics, safety concerns, as well as time constraints. We also continue to see high rates of re-referrals and crisis calls from caregivers, clinical, and community tables as well. The other piece that came forward to us was taking into account the complex histories that our clients are coming into our center, into our sessions with, specifically our youth and adult clientele. So again, really wanting to be mindful of that potential trauma or experiences that they've had with past interventions, past supports, and finding a way that we can be supportive and keeping these aspects in mind, and felt very confident that the PFA SBT process would address these complex histories that can be coming in with our clients. The other piece that we saw as an issue was we saw firsthand, as well as getting feedback, that our clients just weren't getting the access to services they needed to get those meaningful integrations within their community, meaningful gains to have success in their day-to-day life because of the severe challenging behaviors that were occurring. And again, this just feeding into that continual cycle that they're not getting the process and support that they need to have success. So through that, we recognized that we needed to solve the problem, not manage the problem, as Dr. Hanley says there, and making sure that we can be supportive in that, and we're eager to take that on. So how did we do that? Dr. Ruppel kind of gave a nice summary there in terms of how FTF supported us. So we consulted with FTF over a course of a 12-week period to get our training and credentialing as a team completed. So this credentialing process involved weekly client presentations, giving us an opportunity to discuss the successes and progress we were making with our clients, as well as a time to discuss the areas that we still needed to troubleshoot and problem solve and figure out a solution for with our clients. We consulted with Dr. Ruppel from FTF, as she provided those direct observations of us actually implementing these strategies and supports to give us feedback and corrections. So we are ensuring we are doing this properly, as well as completing trainings on how to generalize and maintain these skills once we finished up our process here in the clinic. So recognizing, yes, it's great that we have this great process with us here, but we need to make sure that that's being carried out in our clients' homes with their caregivers, other people that are supporting them as they go through their life. At the end of our process, we are very happy that we had 2 facilitators who are credentialed at their support implementer level, 2 RBA consultants at the lead implementer level, and our clinical manager as a trainer. In terms of the service model that we look to use, so each session consisted of 2 staff. One staff was always the lead, the other staff was there as a support. So that being through prompting and data collection, as well as parents and caregivers were welcome to join our sessions if it felt like it was needed to benefit the client at any time. The space that we used, we kept consistent between when we ran our assessment phase and as well as we moved into the SBT phase of our interventions. As well as within our space, we tried to designate 3 specific areas for our learners. So the one being where practice was going to happen. This is where the work and sometimes challenges are going to happen, and we're going to work through that with you, as well as where that reinforcement is going to occur, where are we going to create that happy, relaxed, engaged moment with you, as well as a break and opt-out space. So that being a place for the client to advocate, should they feel they need to take a break from practice, that's where they could go to do that. We also tried our best to keep our space as a blank canvas, recognizing that all of our clients have different preferences and interests and things that make their environment perfect for them. So we wanted to have the flexibility to accommodate our space on a moment's notice if we needed to make that the perfect environment for all of our clients. So again, we started with that assessment piece. We started with the interview style assessment with our caregivers to gather as much information as we could to ensure that the following assessment, which was a direct assessment in our center with our staff, could be done safely. Following both assessments being completed, we would dive right into the SBT process and start that really important skill building treatment there. All of our clients received 2 sessions per week, which were 3 hours long for up to 12 weeks there. And within those 12 weeks, we looked to focus on the trunk of the tree, as you can see there. So looking at the communication, toleration, relinquishing, and transition piece, feeling that if our learners could have these really strong foundational skills, that was going to allow them to then reach these other branches, as you can see in the trees, their academics, their exercise, their social skills, their leisure skills, because they had the foundational skills to have success now in these other areas and could potentially access those services finally that were going to allow them to flourish these branches that we can see on the tree. And here we just want to include a photo of what our space looks like. So you can see we struck a balance between enriching our space with some fun and interesting things that we hoped our clients may be interested and eager to engage with, while also keeping it open for what the client needed to make changes and adjustments in the moment with them to create that perfect environment so that we're always teaching from a place of joy there. I am now going to pass it off to my colleague, Courtney, who is going to show some very exciting results and pieces that we did along the way with our clients more specifically.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Elyse. Just bear with me as I look to share my screen. All right. Can everyone see that okay? Perfect. So I'm going to spend some time talking about our pilot cohort. So we carried out this process with 5 clients, ranging from children to youth to adults, and ages from 5 years to 29 years of age. Clients had various histories of services ranging from long-standing years of service and interventions, long-standing referrals, multiple referrals from various service providers, accessing interventions from various service providers, and some clients who were brand new to accessing service for severe challenging behavior. All clients did display some levels of severe challenging behaviors, which included behaviors such as self-injury, aggression, and property destruction, with some clients also having histories of experiences with intrusive measures, such as medication and safe management techniques. Now let's look at how we measured progress for our pilot cohort. So here we use the Behavior Health Index, or BHI for short, as both our pre and post-service measure. This tool was completed by caregivers and clinicians to give us a comprehensive view of change, not just in reducing challenging behaviors, but also in building those functional foundational skills and assessing overall well-being. As you can see on the screen, the BHI scores indicators across 3 key areas: critical skills such as functional communication, toleration, leisure skills, behavior management, the severity of the behavior of concern, how that behavior of concern is currently being managed, and health repertoires as well: eating, sleeping, and movement. I'd now like to introduce you to Frank, who is one of our participants in our cohort and also a participant of our adult services programs. We're going to use Frank to help illustrate why we chose the PFA SPT approach and walk you through what service looked like for him. So let's get to know Frank a little bit more. When it comes to communication for Frank primarily used hand guiding and gestures. There were previous attempts to teach augmentative communication to Frank, but those were unsuccessful as a result of his severe challenging behavior. When it comes to leisure, Frank prefers to spend time alone. He's often observing from a distance rather than engaging, and there's been minimal social interaction with staff and peers throughout his programs. When it comes to preferences, there's 2 strong preferences that spark a happy, relaxed, and engaged and joyful state for Frank. That would be going on his iPad and YouTube and listening to music. He's a big fan of Shania, Celine Dion, all the good ones. Finally, in terms of the severe challenging behaviors of concern for Frank. So Frank displayed high levels of self-injury, aggression to others, and property destruction. There's also a history of intrusive safety and medical measures for Frank, and these behaviors have prevented meaningful program gains. So looking at Frank's spotlight, a profile and history such as his really highlights why a different approach was needed. Here's a look at Frank's service in review. So his initial assessment lasted 52 minutes, short and sweet. And throughout that time, he was able to maintain a happy, relaxed, and engaged state. Importantly, there were 0 occurrences of severe challenging behavior, and the team had 100% agreement that we could safely and respectfully turn behaviors on and off. Following his assessment, Frank went right into treatment, and he participated in 12 weeks of skill-based treatment, with 2 sessions occurring per week for about 2.5 hours in length. For Frank, treatment was focused on teaching those foundational skills. So we looked at a communication response for Frank to replace the severe challenging behavior. And for Frank, that was touching an augmentative button that would communicate "my way, please." We then looked at a toleration response for Frank for him to be able to let us know when "my way" couldn't occur or life was getting in the way and it had to be delayed, that he was okay with that delay or denial. And for Frank, that was giving staff a high five. From there, we looked at teaching Frank to relinquish, pausing his iPad, turning down his music, pausing YouTube. And then we looked to get Frank transitioning into his programs to work on some skill-based learning for some other identified skills that would be important. For Frank, that involved daily living, building up some more independence around his routines, teaching him how to be a good roommate, expanding his leisure interests beyond just the iPad or YouTube, and seeing if there was some interest and willingness to participate in group and engage some more social skills. Here is Frank's Behavior Health Index results. So this chart that you'll see on your screen compares his scores from before and after access to our program across those 3 key areas: critical skills, behavior management, and health repertoires. You can see a clear improvement in critical skills for Frank, where we saw improvements in Frank's communication, delay tolerance, and increases in his leisure. The biggest change was in behavior management for Frank, where we saw significant progress in decreasing his challenging behaviors, decreasing the number of staff and injuries that were reported, and as well as increases in his social engagement. Health repertoires for Frank also improved slightly, as Frank was now just transitioning and engaging more program, getting more steps in the day, participating in some of our activities that involve physical movement, which indicates gains in overall well-being for Frank. If we look at Frank's results across the 3 indicators, I hope you can see how this PFA SBT approach really does highlight the job it can do in reducing severe challenging behaviors, but also in its ability to build functional skills and improve quality of life for individuals and their caregivers to move from a restricted to a more unrestricted lifestyle. So I'm sure we're all curious of where Frank is today. So for Frank today, treatment has been generalized into some of his adult programmings and with his adult staff. He's using skill-based treatment that's been embedded into all of his clinical programmings. From this, we've seen the removal of intrusive measures for Frank. So since starting this approach, there's been no need for any medical or safe management interventions. Frank's functional communication repertoire has also expanded. Frank still has access to his My Way button, but we've also been successful in teaching Frank the picture exchange communication system, which is now allowing him to express his needs and make comments in more detail with more precision. There's also been some increased engagement noted from Frank's programs that he attends. He's actively and willingly participating in group activities. He's completing his daily living tasks with more independence, and he's willing to explore new leisure interests. Frank is now being observed to prefer social interaction rather than isolation. Finally, a very big major milestone for Frank has been some recent vocational achievement. So as a result of reducing his severe challenging behavior, Frank successfully completed a paid vocational opportunity at Geneva Centre's annual golf tournament, which he played a key role in the pre-tournament setup of the materials. We're also really excited to share that just a few weeks ago, we received the exciting news that Frank also was accepted to be a volunteer within a local meals service in his community, which marks a meaningful step towards his independence and again, expanding his community participation. Looking at Frank's spotlight and Frank's progress, it does really highlight how the PFA SBT approach can create those meaningful changes across a variety of skills once a foundation has been built and we're able to teach from joy and mutual respect, something that both Dr. Ruppel and Elyse hit home in their presentation slides. Looking to take the spotlight off of Frank, I would like to take a quick look and share our overall results for all 5 of our clients who participated in our pilot cohort. So we're happy to report that positive results were obtained for all 5 clients, highlighting the adaptability and practicality of this approach across clients of different ages, different behaviors of concerns, and previous histories. All 5 of our assessments were successful. We were able to manage behaviors in a safe and dignified way with 0 to low rates of severe challenging behavior occurring. From the Behavior Health Index pre and post measures for all 5 clients, we saw clear increases in functional communication. Clients were expressing themselves more effectively with different people and across different settings. Secondly, there was a noticeable drop in severe challenging behaviors. We also observed growth in cooperation and flexibility. Skills like transitioning, relinquishing, and a willingness to learn or follow adult-led instructions improved significantly. We also saw fewer injuries and fewer restrictions. That means that clients were able to access more program spaces and access more opportunities for learning of new skills and for social engagement. Lastly, we were able to generalize skills for all 5 of our clients. So throughout the program, caregivers and other department teams had training and collaboration opportunities to ensure that those foundational skills were transitioned into the client's everyday life. So what's next for our PFA and SBT at Geneva Centre? Well, we do have some exciting things up our sleeve and we're planning to go ahead with. So first up, we're looking to grow our team. So by January 2026, we'll have a larger established team of credentialed trainers and implementers ready to support even more clients. We're also looking to expand how and where we offer this service. We're pairing this service with our funded mediator model to reach more families. And we're currently now starting to run this program in homes to help minimize any transportation or accessibility barriers. Training is going to be another big focus for us. We want to make sure our team is well equipped to support both our internal programs and external partners and provide supervision for those who would look to take on the PFA SBT initiative. And finally, just as we're doing today, we're getting out into the community. I think you can all see that we're all very excited and passionate about this cohort, about this project that we've taken on, and we're really excited to share what's working with this approach and teaming up for further research and education opportunities. Lastly, I did just want to share our link to our website for Behaviour Services. So if anyone is interested in learning more about the other types of behavior services that we offer, feel free to go to our website, genevacentre.ca, and go to the behavior services section, where you can read more about the program, read more about what a referral looks like, and you can click the I'm interested button to be connected to a program coordinator and a member of our intake team. Before we wrap up today, and I close my slides down for a Q&A, I just want to give a very special thank you and shout out. Very big thank you to Dr. Ruppel and FTF Behavior Consulting. Without their support, this program wouldn't be where it is today. I really want to thank our clinical service teams who participated within the program, and as well to our amazing clients and caregivers. Thanks so much, everyone. Great.
Okay, I'm just hopping on again to say thank you to everyone, but there is a couple of questions, if we can answer those. There's a little bit of time left. One of the first questions is, what is the eligibility of this program for behaviors?
I can go ahead and answer that question. So for this program, right now, we are currently looking to run this program for those who are under 18 years of age, who do have a severe challenging behavior of concern that is having a significant impact and interfering in one's and caregivers' everyday life. We are right now looking to service those with an M postal code through our funded program, so it can remain fully funded at this time, but we're looking to explore further and further opportunities for that. As of right now, if you want more information or more details, you can go to that link that I just previously shared, and it will give you a much more thorough rundown about what our current program eligibility criteria is, and also connect you to a member of our intake team who can have a more meaningful, in-depth conversation. Dr. Ruppel or Elyse, if there's anything else there that you wanted to hit on.
I'll just add that this program is a great option if you're outside of the eligibility area geographically and you're interested in finding support. You can go to ftfbc.com, and we do have some resources for trying to find supports in other geographic areas until you're able to access something from the Geneva Centre.
And like Courtney said, this service is a funded service, so there is no fee currently for our clients to be accessing the service, which is a very nice benefit to all of them.
There's also a question about whether there's a wait list.
So at this time, we are doing our best to not have a wait list and keep our wait list short and sweet to prevent longer wait periods and to be able to access service quite immediately. So what I do suggest, if you do have someone in mind, our wait list right now is quite short. So I would highly recommend, again, going back to our website, filling out and clicking that I'm interested form to get connected to one of our intake members, who will be able then to gain more information and see if a referral does make sense for this program.
Okay, and then another question coming in is asking, what is the average length of this treatment?
So for our program, we service up to 12 weeks, 12 consecutive weeks of service. We're hoping to have sessions happen 2 times per week for up to 3 hours in duration each.